This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting, David Muir.
Good afternoon. We're coming on the air with news about President Biden and classified documents now found at two locations, his former office after he was vice president and at his home in Wilmington, Delaware. Attorney General Merrick Garland is about to speak about the discoveries. It is expected he will appoint a special counsel to investigate the matter. President Biden today confirming his lawyers found a small number of classified documents locked in a storage unit in his garage and in his home. His legal team releasing a statement saying almost all of those documents were found in the garage and that one page was discovered, quote, in an adjacent room. The president insisting he is fully cooperating with the Justice Department and National Archives, and just as they did with roughly 10 classified documents found in his former office at the Penn Biden Center in November. The president's legal team also searching his residence in Rehoboth Beach, where they say nothing was found. Critics, of course, already comparing these findings to the investigation against former President Trump. People in both parties pointing out that there are differences, though, with certainly the numbers and that Biden has voluntarily handed these documents over. Let's listen to the Attorney General, Merrick Garland.
Good afternoon. I'm here today to announce the appointment of Robert Hur as a special counsel pursuant to Department of Justice regulations governing such matters. In keeping with those regulations, I have today notified the designated members of each House of Congress of the appointment. I'm joined today by John Lausch, the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, who conducted the initial investigation into the matter that I will describe today. On the evening of November 4th, 2022, the National Archives Office of Inspector General contacted a prosecutor at the Department of Justice. It informed him that the White House had notified the archives that documents bearing classification markings were identified at the office of the Penn Biden Center for Diplomacy and Global Engagement, located in Washington, D.C. That office was not authorized for storage of classified documents. The prosecutor was also advised that those documents had been secured in an archives facility. On November 9th, the FBI commenced an assessment consistent with standard protocols to understand whether classified information had been mishandled in violation of federal law. On November 14th, pursuant to Section 600.2b of the Special Counsel Regulations, I assigned U.S. Attorney Lausch to conduct an initial investigation to inform my decision whether to appoint a special counsel. Mr. Lausch has served as the U.S. Attorney in Chicago since 2017. Before that, he spent more than a decade as an assistant U.S. attorney in that same office. I selected him to conduct the initial investigation because I was confident his experience would ensure that it would be done professionally and expeditiously. On December 20th, President Biden's personal counsel informed Mr. Lausch that additional documents bearing classification markings were identified in the garage of the president's private residence in Wilmington, Delaware. President Biden's counsel informed Mr. Lausch that those documents were among other records from the period of the president's service as vice president. The FBI went to the location and secured those documents. On January 5th, 2023, Mr. Lausch briefed me on the results of his initial investigation and advised me that further investigation by a special counsel was warranted. Based on Mr. Lausch's initial investigation, I concluded that under the special counsel regulations, it was in the public interest to appoint a special counsel. In the days since, while Mr. Lausch continued the investigation, the department identified Mr. Hur for appointment as special counsel. This morning, President Biden's personal counsel called Mr. Lausch and stated that an additional document bearing classification markings was identified at the president's personal residence in Wilmington, Delaware. When I first contacted Mr. Lausch about this matter, he said he could lead the initial investigation, but would be unable to accept any longer-term assignment because he would be leaving the department in early 2023 for the private sector. U.S. Attorney Lausch and his team of prosecutors and agents have conducted this initial investigation with professionalism and speed. I am grateful to them. Earlier today, I signed an order appointing Robert Hur as special counsel for the matter I've just described. The document authorizes him to investigate whether any person or entity violated the law in connection with this matter. The special counsel will not be subject to the day-to-day supervision of any official of the department, but he must comply with the regulations, procedures, and policies of the department. Mr. Herr has a long and distinguished career as a prosecutor. In 2003, he joined the department's criminal division, where he worked on counterterrorism, corporate fraud, and appellate matters. From 2007 until 2014, Mr. Herr served as an assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Maryland, where he prosecuted matters ranging from violent crime to financial fraud. In 2017, Mr. Herr rejoined the department as the Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General. In 2018, he was nominated and confirmed to serve as a U.S. Attorney for the District of Maryland. As U.S. Attorney, he supervised some of the department's more important national security, public corruption, and other high-profile matters. I will ensure that Mr. Herr receives all the resources he needs to conduct his work. As I have said before, I strongly believe that the normal processes of this department can handle all investigations with integrity. But under the regulations, the extraordinary circumstances here require the appointment of a special counsel for this matter. This appointment underscores for the public the department's commitment to both independence and accountability in particularly sensitive matters, and to making decisions indisputably guided only by the facts and the law. I am confident that Mr. Herr will carry out his responsibility in an even-handed and urgent manner and in accordance with the highest traditions of this department. Thank you all.
An extraordinary turn of events here. Attorney General Merrick Garland just moments ago saying it is in the public's interest to appoint a special counsel now to look into classified documents discovered in at least 2 locations involving President Biden. These documents, of course, taken from the administration after he served as vice president with then President Obama. At first, U.S. Attorney John Lausch, who was appointed during the Trump years, had been handling this investigation. The Attorney General saying that Lausch informed him that he would be leaving the department for the private sector in 2023, said he would not be able to handle this investigation long term. Merrick Garland saying moments ago the extraordinary circumstances of this case, obviously saying in so many words because this involves a current and sitting president, the extraordinary circumstances of the case and their dedication to independence and accountability, that a special counsel is warranted in this case. I want to bring in Pierre Thomas, our Chief Justice correspondent. Robert Herr will be the special counsel here. Pierre, what do we know about him?
Well, he's the former U.S. Attorney for the state of Maryland, a person steeped in national security investigations. He also has worked personally with FBI Director Chris Wray. And David, I have to tell you, the Attorney General used the word extraordinary in part because it is extraordinary. You have a sitting president 2 years into his term, and now he will be the subject of a full-scale criminal investigation. The bottom line here, David, is that these documents, which are classified, are supposed to be housed in very specific locations. You heard the Attorney General say that the office, the Penn Biden Center office, was not a place that was prescribed to be allowed to keep these kinds of documents. And when that occurs, the Justice Department takes it quite seriously. And now I'm told as well that the key for this decision, in part, was built on the fact that these new documents discovered in December, were at his garage. It makes it more difficult to explain away the notion that the president himself might not have been personally involved in getting those documents to his private property. That will have to be determined, but the FBI has begun an investigation to look and talk to the people involved in moving those documents, David. Extraordinary situation.
And Pierre, one quick follow-up for you. One of the main differences, and you heard the Attorney General point this out there, that at least initially when this all began to unfold, that the call went in the other direction, that the National Archives had been informed by lawyers connected to Biden about these documents. It wasn't the other way around, that they were searching, reached out to Biden, and that he refused. It was the other way around in this case.
Right. It's important that the Biden officials, when they found these documents initially, did reach out to the National Archives. And the National Archives, in turn, reached out to the Justice Department. So that very much works in the president's favor in terms of, them trying to be transparent. But again, David, the bottom line is the documents were out of place for nearly 6 years. And the Justice Department now is tasked with finding out why were they out of place, who was responsible for putting them there, and what were the circumstances. Another key, David, they will look very closely at the documents, I'm told, to look at the content and to see if there's any financial gain the vice president and now president would have gotten out of having these materials. That will be key as well.
Yeah, make no mistake, Pierre, President Biden faces serious questions about these classified documents himself. He did address the issue yesterday and again this morning. I want to bring in Mary Bruce in just a moment here, but first let's listen at home to what the president said today about the additional documents now found. Let's listen.
People know I take classified documents and classified materials seriously. I also said we're cooperating fully and completely with the Justice Department's review. As part of that process, my lawyers reviewed other places where documents from my time as vice president were stored, and they finished the review last night. They discovered a small number of documents of classified markings in storage areas and file cabinets in my home and my personal library. This was done in the case of the Biden Penn. This was done in the case of the Biden Penn Center. The Department of Justice was immediately, as was done, the Department of Justice was immediately notified, and the lawyers arranged for the Department of Justice to take possession of the document. So we're going to see all this unfold. I'm confident.
All right. So let's take us through this carefully, Mary Bruce, because these documents have now been found in two different locations: the Biden Penn Center, which was his office after his time as vice president in Washington there, and now at his home as well. Where, in fact, were these documents discovered? Actually in the home itself? I know he read us through that statement there, the president did, but what's your understanding? What are you hearing from the White House?
Well, our understanding is that the documents that were found at his residence were the bulk of them held in the garage. Some were also discovered, one document in what's been described as an adjacent space. Lots of questions now, of course, about the security around these documents, and of course that central question as to how on earth these documents got there, who took them from the White House to this location. And of course the president has been extremely careful in the way that he has commented on this. Both instances when he has commented publicly, he has read very carefully from a pre-prepared statement, and he's gone out of his way to stress that they are cooperating fully with any review. I suspect that will be the case when they do comment eventually on a cooperation with the special counsel. And the president has said earlier this week that he was surprised to learn of the documents that were found in his private office at the Penn Biden Center. He said he didn't know what was in the documents themselves. And now, of course, David, we have a lot of the same questions that the special counsel will be looking into. Primarily, who brought these documents out of the White House? What information is contained in them? Did Biden have any knowledge whatsoever of this? And is there any information in these documents that may in some way be politically damaging to Joe Biden?
And for many of these questions, we're simply not going to get the answers because now, of course, there is a special counsel investigation.
Exactly, David. And when you take a step back, it really is remarkable that you now have the current president and his predecessor, someone who has announced that they are running for re-election, Donald Trump, and someone who is expected to likely run for re-election, Joe Biden, now both involved in dealing with these special counsel investigations related to the handling of classified documents. Of course, this White House has been very insistent on pointing out the key differences between these cases, and there are very big differences. Central among them, the fact that this White House and the Biden team were very quick to alert the National Archives when they discovered these documents, that they are fully cooperating with this review, versus the case with Donald Trump, where he spent months resisting turning over hundreds of classified documents, even resisting a subpoena, ultimately leading to that FBI investigation and the FBI raid on his home in Mar-a-Lago, David.
And to underscore that point, Mary, again, the Biden administration, the president himself, making the point here that these documents have been voluntarily handed over. They claim that that is the major difference here between the classified documents, the situation with the current president versus the previous president. But it is, I'm sure, head-spinning for many at home, the fact that we're dealing now with two special counsel investigations, a sitting president and a former president who could potentially be running against each other in the next election. Mary Bruce live at the White House. I want to bring in our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams. Dan, take us through the significance of what it is we just heard from Merrick Garland, the special counsel investigation. What could the current president now face here in the months ahead?
So the purpose of a special counsel is intended to take the political taint out of it. This person is supposed to be able to investigate on his own without pressure, in effect, without oversight from the Attorney General. But the reality is that this special counsel statute that's being used in all the special counsels that we've heard about as of late still report to the Attorney General. So in the end, the Attorney General still gets to make the final call. But I can assure you that be it Jack Smith, first one on the Trump documents, or Robert Hur, the new one on the Biden documents, if they make a recommendation to the Attorney General to move forward with charges or to not move forward with charges, it would be stunning if the Attorney General somehow rejected that recommendation. So yes, while they still report to the Attorney General technically, as a practical matter, I would expect, and they're certainly intended to, be able to evaluate this independently. But now there's going to be a big question, right? Which is, how could one investigation impact the other? In theory, they should have no impact on one another. They should be done completely independently, and each special counsel should be able to come up with his own conclusion. But what were to happen if Jack Smith were to determine that one of the crimes that Donald Trump should be charged with, not the obstruction of justice, but the possession of the weapons, the possession of the documents, and the Biden special prosecutor were to say Biden should not get charged for possession of the classified documents? That would create, I think, a tough situation for the Attorney General.
Yeah, no question about that, although that's a few steps ahead, certainly from where we are right now. But for our viewers at home, they know it's the year 2023 in a very polarized country. All of this will get politicized as we move forward. But Dan, big picture here, can you remember in recent memory an Attorney General facing a situation, an extraordinary situation like this, where you're now dealing with investigations of a sitting president, the previous president, both cases involving classified documents and special counsels on both investigations?
No, no, and no. I mean, you could have just started with the first one, and the answer would have been no. I mean, this is a really tough situation for the Attorney General, which is why, again, I think he's going to put so much power, so much autonomy. He's going to grant so much autonomy to each one of these special counsels because it's so politically sensitive that he wants to be able to say, I didn't make this call, in effect. You could even hear, by the way, today, when he was talking about the previous U.S. attorney who'd been investigating the Biden documents up to this point, John Roush, he was basically saying he weighed in on this and he believed there should be a special counsel. So already we're seeing that Attorney General Garland is trying to say, this isn't all on me. I'm leaving this to serious pros who are digging in on the evidence, and they are helping me make these decisions.
Our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams, carefully taking us through this here today. Dan, thank you. One last question before we go. I want to bring back in our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, because big picture here, Pierre. People at home are going to be saying, what is going on with this classified information when you look at the current president, the previous president, and classified documents discovered in offices, private offices, and at their homes? There are some serious questions, big picture here, about the handling of classified material in this country.
Absolutely, David. This is supposed to be some of the nation's most sensitive secrets, the things that are supposed to be guarded with all due haste, quite frankly. And I've been talking to sources for years, and they've all made the point that they do not play around and they do not allow people to be sloppy in handling of classified information. The nation's security is at risk. And David, in a practical sense, this is what the current administration will now face. Aides for the president, people associated with him now being called before a grand jury. That is likely to happen. And at some point, Mr. Hur may even make the decision that he needs to talk to the president himself.
And Pierre, before we go here, the FBI has been sent now to President Biden's home to secure these documents?
That is the guidance that we have. And again, some of these documents have already been turned over to the Justice Department. But again, the Justice Department, typically in these cases, does not take the word of anyone. So the president's attorneys could have said, we've turned over everything. Now the question will be for Mr. Hur and the investigators, can we count on that? And should we issue subpoenas to make sure we have everything?
All right, Pierre Thomas, Mary Bruce, Dan Abrams, our thanks to you all and our thanks to you at home for watching here. Again, the big headline at this hour, Special Counsel Robert Hur, now appointed to handle the classified documents discovered from President Biden's time as vice president, those discoveries at both the private office he used after he was vice president and at his home. Our coverage continues on ABC News Live, abcnews.com, and of course the entire team will continue to report this out, and they'll be back with me for World News Tonight a bit later today. I'm David Muir in New York. Good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.